Hello everyone, and welcome to a video where I will show you a very interesting way on how to challenge White's first move, pawn to d4. Now, the reason I'm making this video, yesterday my two nephews came to visit us. They're fairly strong players, both of them maybe like in between 21 to 2300 rating range, and both of them are d4 players. Now, I love playing against d4. Against d4, I have my Scandinavian, I have my hyper-accelerated dragon that I'm still honing. But against the d4, I'm not too well versed, as especially since one of them plays the London system and the other one is very, very versatile. So I had no choice but to challenge them their d4 with pawn to e5 with mixed results. So I decided to improve on this, and I've decided to, well, share the most interesting of findings with you guys with three very, very interesting traps, and maybe a way on how to play if White does not fall for any of this, so you can still have a chance in the game. So let's check it out. So this is for people, like I said, maybe lower rated players who haven't yet studied all of the intricacies of the defenses against d4, and maybe against maybe for someone who prefers open positions and doesn't like close positions with a lot of maneuvering. You like, you know, to sacrifice pawns, you like bishops on long diagonals you want to attack. So this would be for you. So okay, White plays pawn to d4, we play pawn to e5. It's like you know, it's like in the Scandinavian, you would give up the d5 pawn, but then you can recapture with the queen. The problem here is that after e5 and captures, you cannot recapture with the king. But okay, there are many ways that you could play this. Now, depending on your level of play, there are many ways that you could play this. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of fun lines that you can try out. I suggest in bullet and maybe 3-minute blitz, but first one I would like to share is pawn to f6. And it looks a bit weird, but okay, you're gonna give up a pawn for some rapid development. Let's say captures, knight captures on f6, and bishop to g5, which is the best move recommended by the engine. Bishop to c5, and now, for example, knight to f3, which is not the best move for White. The best would be pawn to e3. But White usually wants to go for rapid development, and you will meet this knight to f3 move with knight to e4. And it looks crazy as you're giving up your queen, but maybe some 5,000 people captured the queen in this position if you check out the Leech's database. And if bishop captures on d8, just bishop captures on f2, and the black king is checkmated. So best thing for White here after knight e4 would be to go back with the bishop. This is the only way to defend the f2 pawn, and now you're just gonna capture and play queen to e7, and you're gonna have a much better position, and then, you know, it's up to you. So this is one way to play after d captures on e5, this pawn to f6 move. The one from the title, where over 500,000 people fell for it, is actually bishop to c5. And it looks crazy. You give up a pawn, you develop the bishop before the knight. I mean, what are you even doing here? Well, the idea is that after knight to f3, you will play pawn to d6. Okay, you give up another pawn for development. E captures on d6, and now you play knight to e7. And this looks like a mouse slip. Probably the reason why so many people fall for it is that it's mostly used, like I said, in bullet and maybe 2-minute blitz games, 3-minute blitz games, and it does seem like you wanted to play knight f6 and you played knight to e7, and most people would just capture the pawn, capture the knight with the pawn, and face bishop captures on f2 check, and now the queen is just lost. King captures, queen captures on d1, and like I said, over 500,000 people fell for this, and so will your opponent if you try this. I've played this many times. It works wonders against, even against like 22, 23, 2400 players. You know, someone who hasn't seen it will fall for it. And okay, you will get a lot of development here for White. You will go after the queen, but queen goes after the pawn, and that's pretty much it. If bishop to g5 defending, you can even play f6. If rook to d1, you can capture, and now you just castle. You go for rapid development. You don't even care if even if something like knight to d5 going after the pawn here, just queen f7. You don't even care about the c7 pawn. Your position is just that good. So those are two of the options that you can use, like I said, depending on your level. So pawn to f6 and bishop to c5. In the spirit of the England, I don't know how it's pronounced, England or maybe even England but knight to c6 is in the spirit of the original gambit. But this way you're playing specifically for one trick. For example, knight to f3 defends. You will play queen to e7, saying, okay, I just want to win back my pawn. And now after bishop to f4, which is the only way to defend the pawn, you will play queen to b4 with check. And that's kind of the issue here. White is not lost here by any means, but it's very hard to defend this. The problem is if you play queen to d2, then queen captures on b2, attacks the rook, and after queen to c3, defending everything, there's bishop to b4, and you win the white queen. So that's another thing that can happen. And this queen to d2 move was played over 250,000 times, according to the Leech's database. And that's only according to the Leech's database. There's also other databases. But you could also play bishop to d2, which defends well for white. But there's a game from 1930, Silverman versus Honig, played in Chernovitz, where queen captures on b2 was played, and after bishop to c3, which loses the game, bishop to b4, and you resign here. The threat is bishop captures on c3, or even just captures the rook, as the bishop is pinning the bishop on c3. Queen to d2 was played, and now look at this, just bishop captures on c3. If you capture with the knight, then just queen captures rook, but in the game, queen captures on c3 was played, and queen to c1. Black delivered a very nice checkmate. So those are only some of the options you have here. Pawn to f6 can win you many games. Bishop to c5, like I said, over 500,000 people fell for this. And if you want to go for the straightforward England gambit, knight to c6, queen to e7, over 250,000 people fell for that one. But like I said, the question is, okay, your opponent doesn't fall for this, doesn't fall for this, doesn't fall for this. What if your opponent is just a good player? Well, okay, depending on the range, and maybe you don't have success with ideas like these, you could also play pawn to d6. Even this is possible. And now, let's say your opponent plays e captures on d6, bishop captures. Okay, this is pretty standard stuff. You give up a central pawn, but you will get very, very rapid development. You will get the queen into the game, castle queenside. Your opponent probably castles kingside, and you start pushing those pawns regardless of what happens. Like there's no tomorrow. But like I said, maybe your opponent is not a terrible player. Maybe your opponent is your very strong uncle, and your opponent will just play knight to f3. He will say, okay, I'm already up a pawn. I don't have to capture more. Why don't you just capture back, and then I'm gonna trade queens? Well, here the idea would be to play something like knight to d7 and just invite white into a sort of a false sense of security. White will play bishop to g5, and it looks like resigns territory. I mean, can you even play this with black? Well, turns out you can, and that you're just down a pawn. Pawn to f6, and after e captures and knight captures, for example, pawn to e4, you'll play bishop to e7, let's say knight to c3, and castles kingside. And okay, you're down a pawn, but you have a very, very natural way of developing. Bishop to c4 with check, king to h8, and white castles. How to continue this? You are down a pawn, but is there maybe a way you could poison the position? You can play queen to e8. Here the engine will say pawn to c6 as the strongest idea, covering these two squares and then maybe preparing a future d5, but I think queen to e8 is the most a poisonous idea, as it allows white to make many mistakes. For example, queen to d4, an excellent centralizing move, preparing to bring the rooks into the game. You will play queen to h5, and now white, interestingly, the only good move for white is bishop to f4, or just going back with bishop to e2. But if white plays a natural developing move like rook a to d1, already white is worse. Knight to e5, threatening knight captures on f3, not just to ruin white's pawn structure, but also to remove the defender of the bishop on g5. And after captures and captures, there are very, very few moves for white. For example, if you capture here, not bishop to d6, it looks very tricky, but rook will just capture the bishop, and white is up already. So much material that white doesn't care, giving up the exchange. The tricky move is knight to g4. Now, the queen is attacked. Also, the queen has to defend the bishop on g5. And also, the queen can't move just anywhere, as you'll get checkmated on h2. So you have to preserve the diagonal. Queen captures on c7, but now bishop captures on g5. Black is up a piece, and we'll have a much better game. With some okay moves, you will win this. So the question is, what if white plays queen to d2? Just keeps defending the bishop. Well, now you play knight to g4. Threaten checkmate and also threaten to win the bishop on g5. The only move for white is pawn to h4, and now you will play bishop to c5 with a triple attack on the f2 pawn. And like I said, if you're using this for bullet or 2-minute blitz or 3-minute blitz or even 5-minute blitz, you will have amazing success employing any of these lines. Like I said, if you don't want to learn all of the defenses against pawn to d4, if you want to avoid even the remote possibility of facing the London, then you play pawn to e5. Well, okay, this is Resign's territory because, well, it's not Resign's territory, it's playable for white, but it's so easy to make a mistake here, like the engine gives pawn to b4 as the best move for white, but good luck finding that. Let's say something like knight to d5 is played, you just start capturing on f2, like rook captures on f2, rook captures on f2, bishop captures on f2 with check, king to h1, you will capture here, threaten some nasty discoveries like bishop to f2 check, will take away the g1 square from the white king, and if bishop captures, queen captures, then you just go for a very nice king hunt. You will go queen to h2 with check, king f1, queen to h1 with check, you will go king to e2, only move, queen captures on g2 with check, king to e1, and now queen to g3 with check, king to e2, queen to f2 with check, king to d3, and now finally queen to f3 with check, and the white king has no squares. You either give up the queen or you play knight here, but then knight captures, and what's worse, that the knight cannot even be captured. Queen captures. Rook would be next, but there's nothing better. Or the next move, you're just gonna develop the bishop and play rook to d8, and it's game over. The king cannot go anywhere. And like I said, if you capture, then just captures here, you will be up a full rook. King c3, bishop to wherever the rook is coming into the game. You're up a full rook, and you are checkmating your opponent very quickly and very easily. And what is most interesting about this idea is that it unconsciously counters the London system by default. Because if you're playing this in bullet, and if your opponent is a London player, they will play d4 and very often just pre-move bishop to f4. And e5 and bishop to f4, you will just win a piece, and again, win many bullet games this way. Again, avoiding the London system on move 2. I mean, you try it, you're gonna have an awesome time. Just give me a second. I just want to check in the Leech's database how many times this was actually played. d4, e5, and bishop to f4. Yeah, this was played like, yeah, sorry. d4, e5, and bishop to f4. White played this move 1,225,000 times. So there you have it. There is no argument against pawn to e5 unless you get to like maybe 25-2600, but ELO, I'm not talking about online rating, but in online rating I'm pretty sure you can play this wow, sorry about the camera. You can play this at any level and you will have amazing results. So tell me if you like it. Tell me, try playing it for a day. Share your experiences with us. Maybe there's a line that you found that you want to share with everyone that we can use. And like I said, I'm gonna do my best to beat my nephews with this, as I'm too lazy to study proper opening theory. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Wish you crush many an opponent using the England Gambit. I would like to thank Robert Stadelman, GuernseyChessFestival.org.gg, MyChessSets.com, Jacob Sorvala, and Oris the Great Dane who loves chess for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.